Thanks, Paul. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, brilliant. So, yeah, as Paul said, I'm Hefin Meara, so I'm a listing advisor in the National Listing and Marine team at Historic England. And today I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of some of the cases and the interesting prosecutions that have happened in relation to marine heritage crime in recent years. And I'm also going to have a bit of a look at some of the projects and the measures that Historic England and partners have been involved with to tackle the problem of heritage crime at sea. So to give you a bit of a background to the legislation, because the majority of you in the room are not maritime archaeologists and involved in that side of things, it's really important to bear in mind that it's not a free-for-all when it comes to recovering material from shipwreck sites at sea. The Merchant Shipping Act of 1995 has provisions that means that anybody who recovers material from a shipwreck site is required to report that to the receiver of wreck, who's the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. Anybody salving material has got 28 days to report that material, and that means it gives the receiver of wreck the opportunity to work through the salvage process to determine the ownership of this material and, where appropriate, to arrange for a salvage award to be paid for the finder. Once a ship is lost, it doesn't stop being owned by somebody, and that's a really important thing. So the ship itself will have an owner. The cargo that the ship is carrying might have a different owner, and that ownership can then change depending on whether insurance payouts are made out and so on. So it's a long and complicated process to determine that, and that's where the receiver comes in, and that's really important. When no owner can be determined, or where the owner's not interested in the material and there's no salvage award needed to be paid, that recovered material can be given to the finder instead of a salvage award. And these same rules apply whether we're talking about a ship that sank yesterday or something that was lost 500 years ago or even further. But where materials of historic or archaeological interest, the receiver will work with agencies like Historic England to ensure that that material is deposited with an accredited museum where possible to ensure that it's long-term public access. And it's really important to emphasise that most divers and salvers are really happy to follow those rules. It's been a long effort to educate and to get people on side. Every year, thousands of objects are reported to the receiver of wreck in this way. And thanks to a long-standing data sharing agreement between the receiver and Historic England, that information is shared and it's used to enhance national data sets. So in this way, these useful discoveries of things like bells that have got the ship's name on it, or makers plates that say the name of the ship, they're great for identifying previously unknown wrecks, even down to really nerdy little things like serial numbers on engine components can help identify the name of a shipwreck as well. So it's fantastic for a knowledge enhancement and to be captured in national records. And then this information is also shared with the Hydrographic Office as well to improve their national data sets as well, which help inform the safety of navigation at sea. But unfortunately, there's a very small minority that are not happy to follow these rules. And a very small number of divers have been systematically avoiding and reporting recovered material for several years. So the first case we'll look at here covers two divers that were prosecuted for not reporting their recoveries as required by the Merchant Shipping Act. So over a period of about 13 years, these two divers had systematically recovered artefacts and structural material as well from about 9 shipwrecks in the English Channel off Dover. They used explosives and cutting equipment to remove structural elements, and were using a crane on the back of a vessel to recover large material. Following a raid that was undertaken by the police and the receiver, several thousand objects were recovered from storage, and that included things like the ceramics you can see up there and cannon as well. So we're not just talking little pieces here. Even parts of First World War German submarines as well. So the material was estimated to be worth about £250,000. The two divers were eventually caught after belatedly reporting the material, but it was clear that it hadn't been done within that 28-day period that was required by law. So yeah, these divers ended up in court, and they were fined £60,000 plus costs. The next case to look at is the recovery and sale of several bronze cannon that were recovered from the wreck of the London in the Thames estuary. These bronze guns were recovered by a diver who did the right thing and reported them to the receiver. However, he falsely claimed that the cannon had come from a different wreck located outside UK territorial waters. But thanks to a long and complicated research process, evidence indicated that these cannons had indeed come from the wreck of the London, which is located off Southend-on-Sea. The site's a protected wreck now. It's one of the ones that's on Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register due to the ongoing erosion that the site is facing. But the investigation by the Maritime and Coastline Agency, in conjunction with archaeologists and experts in historic ordnance, proved that the cannon had come from the London. So this salver pleaded guilty to fraud and was given a 2-year custodial sentence. And he was also fined £51,000 under the Proceeds of Crime Act and £35,000 in costs as well. There's also large-scale salvage going on as well. So this is the Cheerful, located off the north coast of Cornwall, lost in 1885 after a collision. It was en route from London to Liverpool, carrying a cargo of tin and copper ingots. In 2016, a British man was prosecuted for the unlawful salvage of the material from this wreck site after £50,000 worth of tin ingots were illegally recovered. So the Marine and Coastal Access Act of 2009 established the requirement for marine licensing offshore. And it's certain activities at sea are considered licensable activities, and it's an offence to undertake any of these activities without that appropriate licence from the Marine Management Organisation. That's in England only. It's a devolved matter in the home nations. So a licence is required to remove any object from the seabed in the UK marine zone using a vehicle, a vessel, or other marine structure. So this salvage is undertaken by a Dutch salvage vessel, the Bella, and it had taken a big salvage operation on several wreck sites around the coast of the UK. But the vessel was intercepted by an offshore patrol vessel, HMS Severn, and boarded by officers from the MMO and Royal Navy, who and the tinging that's recovered from the Cheerful were clearly visible on the deck. And it was very obvious that they didn't have the required licence for that removal. So the Dutch owner of the vessel was fined £2,000, and while a British salvage consultant was also sentenced to a community of 150 hours of unpaid work. We've also got large-scale salvage operations like this happening. So in 2018, a diver and a boat skipper were prosecuted for the removal of structural material and artifacts from several shipwrecks off the south coast. This is the wreck of HMS Hermes, which is designated as a place under the Protection of Military Remains Act. It was a British battlecruiser lost in the Dover Straits in 1914 after it was torpedoed. The pair recovered large amount of material from this site as well, including the wreck of a condenser. And following investigation by French authorities and Kent police involving Historic England as well, the properties of the two people were raided with over 100 items of unreported wreck recovered. Photographs were recovered from the computer of one of the guys as well, which showed the condenser on board the salvage vessel shortly after they were diving on the site. Given it was a really high value for scrap metal at the time, and the pair were able to make quite a lot of money through the sale of this material at scrap merchants. Shortly following the recovery of that condenser, one of the offenders cashed a cheque with a scrap dealer for more than £5,000. So yeah, a lot of money to be made selling this material to unscrupulous salvers. The diver was convicted of 4 counts of fraud and 1 count of money laundering, and the boat skipper of 4 counts of fraud as well. And the diver also received a custodial sentence of 4 years in prison, and the skipper to 3.5 years as well. So most of these cases so far were sites that were not protected or at the time, but there's also quite a bit of activity going on protected wreck sites as well, which is where Historic England comes involved. There's been unauthorised recovery of material, as well as damage as a result of fishing and other activities. I'll give a brief overview of some of the incidents here, and then cover some of our attempts to mitigate that damage and to ensure it doesn't happen again. So the map on the slide there shows the protected wrecks around the coast of the UK. There's about 6,000 shipwrecks around the coast of England that we know of, and another 31,000 or so that we know went down, but we haven't found them yet. But there's only 57 that are designated as protected wrecks under Section 1 of the Act. And these range from Bronze Age cargo scatters all the way through to early First World War submarines and everything in between. The PWA allows the Secretary of State to designate a restricted area around these sites, and that can apply to cargo as well. So even if the shipwreck itself has gone, the cargo can still be protected. And anything that's considered to be of historical, artistic, or archaeological importance. Section 2 of the Act is administered by the MCA, the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, and that's for protection of dangerous wrecks. So there's just the one around the coast of England. That's the Richard Montgomery, the coast of North Kent. So a Second World War Liberty ship lost with a cargo of munitions. So don't go near that one. So several instances of theft and things from protected wreck sites over the years. Two recent ones include the theft of a bronze cannon from a protected wreck off the coast of Suffolk at Dunwich Bank, and a torpedo hatch from the Holland No. 5 early submarine here on the coast of Sussex. These objects haven't been recovered to date, but it's the impetus for Historic England's work in tackling heritage crime at protected wreck sites. In more recent years, we've been involved with scheduling underwater as well, and some of these sites have been damaged as well. So here we've got the example of the Valentine tank assemblage located off Poole Bay. So these were Second World War floating tanks, and they were lost during a live fire exercise called Exercise Smash in 1944, as a practice for the invasion of Normandy. Unfortunately, some of these tanks, the sea was very, very rough. They didn't float properly, and 7 of them were lost in Poole Bay, and they're now scheduled monuments. 2 of the tanks lie really close together, and they're in about 10 meters of water, and they're a really, really popular dive site. They're great for novice divers to go and visit, nice and shallow, or make for a really, really good second dive of the day following something deeper, further offshore. There are several charter boats based out of the area, so Swanage and Poole, Weymouth, that sort of area. They're all very interested in diving new sites. Taking regular shuttle services out to the tanks with hundreds, possibly even thousands of divers visiting these rare Second World War sites every year. In 2022, we received notification that an incident occurred and that the turret that you can see on tank 1 there had become detached from the only fully intact tank, and it now lay on its side a short distance away from the tank. Exactly how this occurred is unclear. Could be the result of a large vessel accidentally dragging its anchor through the site, or as a result of a misguided attempt to move a concrete sinker that's used to moor close to. But anyway, to mitigate this damage, Historic England commissioned the maritime archaeologists from Bournemouth University to undertake remedial works on the tank. The interior of the tank was filled with sandbags, as you can see there. And this served both to prevent divers access to the tank, and we also fitted zinc anodes to slow down the rate of decay. Here we've got the A1 protected wrecks. This is an early submarine. Shipwreck sites are fantastic as artificial reefs. They form an upstanding thing in the seabed, and they are quite likely to attract a huge amount of fish. And because of that, they attract fishing. Unfortunately, in some instances, this can cause quite a bit of damage. So what you can see here is pots and lines are becoming entangled in the site, causing a fair bit of damage. There's broken plates and so on. We commissioned some fieldwork to recover this material to help preserve the site and to try and work out who would place the pots in the first place. But unfortunately, it appeared that any identifying tags had been removed. This is the Klein Hollandia, a Dutch wreck off the coast of Sussex, which is also impacted by fishing. So there's a small amount of damage you can see in the lines on the bottom there. So as a result of this, we've been really keen to look at methods to tackle crime. What can we do to reduce the risk of theft or reduce the risk of damage from fishing vessels? So the first project I'm going to look at here has been the use of forensic marking products underwater. So this has been common practice on buildings, as has already been mentioned earlier today. So we look at the marking of lead on church roofs and so on, which is fantastic. But we were really keen to find something equivalent for use underwater. So Historic England commissioned MSDS Marine to undertake a project to develop a suitable marking product. And during the project, the Dutch Cultural Heritage Agency, RCE, also became a project partner and provided additional elements of funding for the projects. So these products were developed and tested in laboratory conditions and then in a benign water environment in a harbour. And once everybody was happy that they were fit for purpose and that all environmental safety checks had been undertaken, they were deployed on protected sites during the summer of 2013. So the only one we saw publicly spoken about so far has been this Klein Hollandia, the Dutch vessel off the coast of Sussex. And you can see divers marking the site here. So the bronze guns have been marked with this product. Signage has been installed on the sites as well. And that way means that if anybody does go and tries to steal a cannon, that's going to give us a fantastic way of tracking that material and shows that even if divers aren't on site or historically not able to monitor the site at the time, it gives us a way of linking any potential thieves and salvors to recovered material. Training has been taking place with enforcement agencies in recent months. Signage has been deployed around wharfs and marinas to ensure that sea users are aware and that the sites have been protectively marked. And yeah, signs on the sites as well. So it's really important. They've been deployed on real wreck sites now. The challenge is going to be to return to these sites this summer now and to see how well the marker products have survived over the course of the last year, because it's fingers crossed. See, Alison's got fingers crossed there. We think they should be still there, but the sea is a very, very physically dynamic environment. There's a lot of storms going on, and so we're looking forward to the next stage of this. We've also been working on the satellite monitoring of shipwreck sites. So the Maritime Archaeology Sea Trust, in partnership with Ocean Mind, has developed the Marine Observatory, and this has been used across the world. I'll show you some slides from them in a moment. But we used it on 2 pilot areas around the coast of the UK, looking at Poole Bay, where those Valentine tanks were, and on the Goodwin Sands. And through this project, we were able to do a review of the last 12 months of data, looking at AIS, so Ship Vessel Automatic Identifying Services, which is a great way of tracking ship movements. But it is possible for unscrupulous marine users to turn off that system. But through the use of the observatory, they're able to use synthetic aperture radar and electro-optical imagery to track ships that have gone dark in that respect. And that was really interesting. We were able to track the various movements. It picked up Historic England funded projects on the protected sites, so that's good. It shows that it is really working and can pick up ships there. So we'll be interested to see what happens next, and some very interesting developments there. The team at MAST have also been working on projects around the coast, around the world as well. So here you can see monitoring of a marine protected area off Sicily, and also they've been working on the looting of British warships in the South China Sea as well. I recommend you have a look at the MAST website for that in more details. At Historic England, we're really lucky to work with a fantastic, dedicated bunch of volunteers. So protected wreck sites all require a license to visit. We've got 57 protected wreck sites. We've got about 50-odd protected wreck licensees, and they oversee a team of around about 200 dedicated divers that are visiting these sites all the time. They're the eyes and ears on the ground. They're absolutely important. They often live very, very near to the sites, so they're able to visit on a regular basis. And that's really important. But unfortunately, we can't be there all the time. They can't be there all the time. So through the development of the Site Security Champion process, we're able to build up that network and embed the volunteers with the local police forces, with the National Coast Watch Institution, with harbour managers and so on. And through building up an assessment of a risk assessment of how these sites are vulnerable to crime, what are the quick wins that we can do to reduce that risk, and how we can put everybody in connection with each other to make sure those sites are as safe as possible has been really important. This model was based on something pioneered by Ron Howell at the Southwest Maritime Archaeological Group to look after the Salcombe Cannon sites. It's been really successful. It's fantastic. Everybody's already mentioned the positive benefits of a high-vis jacket with a badge and a logo, and it's no different here. It's really important. But yeah, ensuring that all those nearby stakeholders are aware of the roles and responsibilities and know who to call in the event of an incident. And in this way, the teams, the police, the harbour masters, they're able to support each other in monitoring the sites. A final project I'll cover here then is the development of the Common Enforcement Manual for Heritage Crime at Sea. This was a project undertaken by Plymouth Law School and MSDS as well. And it's a follow-on project from a project we took to look at how to enhance protection of underwater heritage assets. So this manual provides a one-stop location so that enforcement and investigative agencies working in the marine zone can find out information on what they need to do so they come across what they believe to be heritage crimes taking place. It's a way of harnessing that resource that's out there. So the Border Force, the Coast Guard, the Navy, police, marine units, get them all involved in being the eyes and ears on the ground. It's got background information, high-level summaries of the relevant legislation and flow lines and diagrams to guide officers through all those required actions. We're not able to cover and monitor all these protected wrecks at all times. They're far offshore a lot of the time, but by ensuring that all these marine enforcement agencies are fully aware of what constitutes an offence and what action needs to be taken, we can ensure that opportunities to target historic shipwrecks are greatly reduced. The draft manual's been out for consultation with all these partner agencies, and the final product will be launched in the very near future. So there we go. That's a really quick run through recent examples of prosecutions, unreported recoveries, damage by fishing vessels, and large industrial scale salvage. We looked at examples of damage and theft that's taken place and seen how difficult it is to enforce and to prosecute in a lot of these instances. And we have a look at some of those measures that Historic England's taken to tackle this problem. Developments like underwater protective markings, increased use of satellite surveillance and site security champions fully support these protected sites. And the Common Enforcement Manual will ensure that efforts to tackle heritage crime at sea are on a par with those on land. Protected shipwrecks won't be considered easy targets. If you want to find out any more about this, there's links there, including a link to our virtual dive trails, and we've got our maritime stand over there, so come and have a chat with us at lunchtime, and we'll be happy to show you some of our other stuff. So yeah, thank you.